Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup. My name is Karim Shami, and today I'm joined with the one and only Sharmeen Narwani. Before starting, please share, like, and subscribe to our channel if you're not subscribed, and please leave us a comment. Today will be an interesting episode. We're gonna discuss, me and Sharmeen, the recent visit of Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi Crown Prince, to Washington, and also we're gonna discuss our exclusive news story that came out 2 days ago regarding the Russian military presence in south of Syria, and of course the recent attacks done by Israel in Gaza and in South Lebanon. How are you, Sharmeen? Good.
Fine. We're doing this for the first time without having
Yeah,
someone taking on hosting duties.
100%. And hi, Sharmeen, and hi, sorry, hi, Sima, and hi, Esteban. Yeah, so of course, everybody is talking about what happened uh, since 2 days and also yesterday, the meeting between Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and Trump. There was many things discussed during their meetings, and of course, there's many public statements that came out from Saudi Arabia and from the White House. Of course, the first they said there is a 600 million $1 billion deal between the two countries. Then it was increased to $1 trillion, and of course the controversial selling of F-35s to Saudi Arabia, because of course we all know that the Israelis, Netanyahu, and of course the opposition didn't like this deal at all. And of course, Saudi Arabia commenting that they have no problem to join the Abraham Accords, but they want a clear solution for the Gaza plan, and of course they want a two-state solution between, of course, Israel and the Palestinians. First, we have to start about the 1 billion deal, because we were discussing that you told me you
1
think that
trillion. Yeah.
1 trillion. Yeah, sorry, I'm not good in numbers. So you were telling me, yani, for you, when you read the agreements between the two, you think that Saudi Arabia won more from this deal than Trump.
I mean, they did. You know how long the Saudis have been in discussions and negotiations with the Americans about setting up indigenous nuclear enrichment capabilities and setting up a nuclear plant, a nuclear energy plant, and um, you know, purchase of the F-35s, right? Um, I mean, the Saudis have withstood American pressure through 3 administrations to join the Abraham Accord. They have they said no to Trump in his first presidency. They said no to Biden, and now they're still saying no to Trump. And if you've been following the podcast and you watch us regularly, you know that Karim has this talking point that makes me hit my head against the wall, which is basically that the Persian Gulf Arab states are absolute slaves. Whatever the Americans demand of them, they will do. Okay, because they're nothing with the Americans. And my argument is, um, certainly we've seen that historically in many instances, but you have a new generation of Persian Gulf leaders. You know, the sons and grandsons are now operating things, and they've grown up with a great deal of arrogance and privilege, and it's not as easy as it used to be. Plus, because of multipolarity and the rise of that, these young emirs have options, and they do play the options. We've seen them play those cards. You know, the Americans asked them to increase production, oil production during the Biden years, and the Saudis said niet, meaning there was a Russian veto on that. So um, I do think, and I think many people are commenting on this. I mean, I immediately saw the White House statement sheet yesterday, which outlines the packages. There's a, you know, meaning the discussion points. There's many things in discussion still. You know, they use the most opaque language, which gives a sense of kinetic, right? It gives the sense that much is happening, but in fact, we don't actually know that anything much is happening. Obviously, the things that pop up are the F-35s that the Saudis wanted. They got, okay. The nuclear plant, it's been approved, with the caveat, of course, that they will not be able to enrich. Now, just to point
And
out,
also, Sharmin, they said that the F-35s, uh, they are not like the state of the art F-35s. They gave them the base model or downgraded model so they can keep Israel the ultimate power in the region. That's what they said
right,
also.
but let's be honest, a lot of pretty much any US brown ally has a kill switch on whatever military equipment they're getting. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah. So on the nuclear power plant deal, the Americans have made very clear that it doesn't allow the Saudis to enrich themselves, right? Which is kind of so insane because per the IAEA, all countries have the right to enrich as long as there's oversight, you know, that there's no secret weaponization program. So the Saudis accepted a deal. They could have gotten a much better deal with the Russians,
Yeah, of course.
right? Who have now signed a deal for 8 new uh, energy generating nuclear power plants in Iran,
And
which the Iranians will run, right?
and four in Egypt also.
And for in Egypt, the Saudis have signed a stupid deal. Okay. Why they were looking for the Americans to do it, I don't know. I mean, I guess the Americans, even though the Saudis had this nuclear energy plant demand, and the Americans knew that the Russians could slip in there and provide it, they managed to keep this a discussion point. They never said no to the Saudis. They just tried to stretch out the time before having to capitulate because, in fact, the Saudis had other options and better options. The almost $1 trillion language comes from the White House official statement, okay, which they mention more than once, which is why I was, correcting us earlier that it's not 1 trillion, even though all of the major media headlines say 1 trillion. Um, it's easy for the Saudis to hand out cash. They've spent their entire existence since the discovery of oil handing out cash to get what they want. Please note that $1 trillion doesn't get sent over on an airplane or in, like a bank account wired immediately. This is a work in progress. These are MOUs. Okay. The devil is always in the details. Some of these could have been already in the works prior to Trump becoming president. Some of these, I mean, I think today Mohammed bin Salman is meeting with a bunch of corporate bosses in America who I'm sure are going to pitch their businesses to him. Uh, Everyone's going to try to get a piece of that pie. But these things take, honestly, they take years sometimes to negotiate. The Saudis got 300 tanks. None of this is huge,
Yeah,
right? It was
yeah.
a colossal flop for Trump in the sense that he is very kinetic in trying to make out that he's a peacemaker, that he's a deal maker, not just for peace, but for America, right? And so the optics are very important for him. And in this case, if you read between the lines, there wasn't anything significant here. That's how I feel. Now,
There is something significant regarding the Abraham Accords, where Saudi Arabia demanded a two-state solution. This is for me is significant
but
because for me, according to my, uh, يعني
according to your
according to
belief system, the Saudis
beliefs,
say yes to everything the Americans demand.
maybe they said yes, but they are acting now.
No, no, they didn't. This is the third administration the Saudis have said no to the Abraham Accords. But what they're discussing now, what we're hearing that Mohammed bin Salman told Trump, "Listen, I'm okay with it, the Abraham's Accord, but we have to have a Palestinian state within 5 years and we have to have a pathway to that state starting to be built now." Now, of course, Trump can never say, "I agree with that. We're going to have a Palestinian state," because the Israelis would go into meltdown, right? Or at least this Israeli prime minister and his cabinet. So it's he basically knows the Saudis are not saying yes to the Abraham Accords. There's something else that really needs to be pointed out, and it's disappeared. I mean, it never really appeared in the news cycle, but there is a second condition that Saudi officials have put on the table regarding the Abraham Accords. And this was earlier this year. A senior Saudi official said, not with this Israeli cabinet. Okay. So you can skim over it, you can pretend that was never said. That's what was said. Okay. The Saudis have said, we will not enter into any agreement, a normalization with Israel, as long as this cabinet is in place, meaning also this prime minister. And that's interesting to me because let's be honest, after seeing this agreement, seeing the way Trump just, absolutely raved about Mohammed Salman and held his hand continuously and was just like the greatest leader in the world,
Yeah,
this man is the most powerful person in the region. He just went on and on
and how
waxing
he
poetic.
and he how he defended him when the reporter asked him about
Yeah, how
Khashoggi
dare
also.
you ask our guests questions, journalist? you know, it was cringeworthy, but nonetheless, he was all over Mohammed bin Salman. I mean, this is a marked departure from their first Oval Office meeting from his first administration, Trump's first administration, in which he treated him like like a convenient baboon, right? Sitting on the stage. And he was like, this is what they're going to buy from us, and Mohammed bin Salman looked
Yeah,
visibly uncomfortable with being treated
it's the
as,
second time he does it with them.
yeah. So in this case, I mean, Trump couldn't have been more effusive. It shows that there is a change in the relationship. And this is something, Kareem, I've been saying for a while now, which is uh, the Gulf Arabs, certainly after Trump's May trip to the Persian Gulf states, have Trump's ear. Okay. They can pick up the phone, they have Trump's ear in a whole different way than existed in the first administration.
Yeah,
And I think he's finding common cause with them. He's agreeing with most of what they're saying. This is the thing. From his own conviction, from his own sort of like the problems he's faced with in terms of Israel, in terms of Russia, in terms of Ukraine, etc. I think he finds um, friends in the region who kind of agree with him across the whole spectrum. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
They don't want to fight with China. They don't want to fight with Russia. They want Israel to stop. Um, we're seeing this influence permeate, and one of the ways we're seeing it that we were told just yesterday is in MBS's request, and Trump actually posted this on Truth Social, that MBS had requested Trump's involvement in Sudan, which, by the way, happened before this visit. Right, the Americans came in and said, "We've negotiated a ceasefire between the Rapid Support Forces, the UAE-backed terrorist Rapid Support Forces (RSF), and the Sudanese military." Right? I'm sure MBS had a hand in that, but why? Why does he care about Sudan more than he cares about, say, Libya? Not Libya, sorry, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza. Um, well, because the big Saudi competitor, right, to wear the big Arab crown is the UAE. These are frenemies. We've written extensively about the frenemy nature of the Saudi Emirati relationship. The Emiratis were suddenly making gains, okay? And they were also siphoning off over 80% of Sudan's considerable gold resources to the UAE. Okay, there's a race on, by the way, if y'all don't know, between major powers who can hoard the most gold. Okay.
yeah. Also, I want to comment over a couple of things very fast. First, yeah, when Mohammed bin Salman came to power, there are many reports said that he wants to take the place of the UAE in the region, and he did it by asking major companies in the region to move their headquarters from UAE to Saudi Arabia, and many of them did so, and they are continuing to do so. And even media outlets went from UAE to Saudi Arabia, and many companies that were invested in Saudi companies that were invested in UAE moved there. And also, let us not forget the war in Yemen, which lasted many years, and we all know that UAE benefited from this war too much from the ports and the influence. But everybody is blaming, of course, Saudi Arabia, and they have the right to. But Saudi Arabia was in the front of this war. But what happened is that the one who benefited from this war was the UAE.
Yeah, I mean, we often talk about the war in Yemen now 10 years as the Saudi-led war, right?
Yeah, one hundred
But in
percent.
fact, this is a Saudi UAE-led war, and the UAE. I think the Saudis feel that the UAE did some dirties on them. Okay, that the UAE had its own very clear agenda and plan. Let the Saudis take the lead, spend the bulk of the money, come in from behind, and colonize the South. Okay, the South being important because it is along the Red Sea
The
and
the
not Red Sea, sorry,
Gulf of Aden and the
Gulf of Aden
Arabian Sea.
and the Arabian Sea, in which um, you know the UAE has a lot of interest in establishing ports and becoming part of the major routes that are taking place. You know, this is a major strategic play, and Mohammed bin Salman was a newbie, and you know he was being egged on by Mohammed bin Zayed to take this lead in order for the Saudis to take the hits and the UAE to scramble in and get what they wanted. I mean, the winner of the two in this war scenario is the UAE, you know? So that's when we started to see tensions in the Emirati and Saudi relationship. Nonetheless, the Emiratis, um, you know, their militia, the RSF militia that they were backing, that did the massacres that we reported on just a few weeks ago, um, were stopped in their tracks as they were making gains. And based on Trump's statement on Truth Social, it seems very likely that the Saudis had a hand in this to stop the UAE's gains in there. So, I mean, there's so many interesting things going on behind the scenes. I mean, this is all conjecture, but based on realities that we know at the cradle and we in West Asia have been watching. I mean, this is not new. When you look at Syria today, it's a grab. It's a free for all between okay, Western states who want to do contracts. Okay, the Americans who want to make sure that they retain hegemony over Syria. The Turks and the Qataris who want to essentially control Damascus. Okay, the Qataris who did the most work from day one, right? The Arab Spring, media propaganda blitz. The Qataris who did the most have been sidelined. The Saudis came in there, right after Shada appeared in Damascus and tried to take the helm. And of course, the UAE and other countries, they're all trying to ensure their interests in Syria. And this is often in the Syrian war, we saw this when the militant forces, right, would manage to take territory from the Syrian government and army. Within 48 hours, they would turn on each other, okay, because they
Yeah,
were CIA backed, State Department backed, British backed, Turkish backed, Qatari backed, Saudi backed, Emirati backed, Israeli
because
backed.
they didn't have local agenda.
Yeah, well, exactly. But we always knew if they had Syria, they would do this as a country. And as you
Mm.
can see, these guys are in the north, these guys are in the east, these guys are in the south. And of course, the Russians have arrived. And actually, we need to go back to Mohammed bin Salman and Trump's visit. But this is a stick around for the Russian part because I think Karim and I are gonna well, we'll see. We'll see how, whether we agree or not on this. But anyways, the ultimately the I don't think that the Trump got anything. He showed that he was the one sort of pandering. He was the one who really wanted to show his closeness with the Saudis, his affection for them. He really played this visit up. He had a glittering, you know, dinner for with
Yeah,
major celebrities, major heads of industry
Cristiano
show
Ronaldo.
up for Mohammed bin Salman, which is kind of reminiscent of his first visit after he became crown prince, where he was off in Silicon Valley meeting with Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and others, and in Washington being
But
wined and
also,
dined.
don't forget Khashoggi, because he was somehow isolated, and as if this visit, he wants to show the people that he's not isolated anymore,
Absolutely, and
like
Trump
before.
gave him that in
Yeah,
spades. And you don't do that in politics. You don't do that with someone like Trump, who just looks down on everyone basically, unless he wants something from you. So I think visibly we can see the shift in the Saudi American relationship, at least with this US president. He wants the Saudis. He needs the Saudis. He's giving up stuff to the Saudis.
Also, I have also we have to acknowledge that also Trump had a pushback from most of his thoughts. For instance, the Gulf of Mexico, Greenland, Canada becoming the 51st state, him threatening NATO, and of course Venezuela and China, the war, the trade war that he ignited with China. I think on all of these battles or micro battles or big battles that he initiated, I think he lost most of them. Unfortunately, except in our region, he won the Gulf countries because now I think he can say that he's accomplishing many stuff and bringing money to the country and building jobs because this is what was one of his main topics in his campaign. And the only people that are giving Trump what he needs is the Gulf countries, and this also will give the Gulf countries leverage over Trump because he doesn't
100%.
want to lose such allies.
They
And
look
also,
like his best friends right now in
yeah,
the
one hundred
entire
percent,
world. I mean, he's not friendly with the Europeans. You know, Latin Americans are up in arms.
yeah,
Africans, you know, you saw how he treated a delegation of African leaders,
yeah, 100%. It
right?
was,
He's causing trouble in East Asia, and in West Asia there's conflict all around, and then you have the Gulf countries who have money, which is the thing he loves most,
yeah,
and they've got a empathetic ear that they're lending to Trump. Because and I'm telling you, part of that empathetic ear is about Israel. I am sure those guys moaned about Netanyahu because, like I said, the Saudis this year said, offered up another condition, not with this cabinet. We will not normalize with Israel with this cabinet. That's another challenge for Trump. You know, basically, and I've argued this, that getting rid of Netanyahu as prime minister would solve a lot of people's problems. You know, the people who are pro Israel to the end could then try their best to rehabilitate Israel's image, right? Which
yeah.
they want so
It's
badly.
very difficult with Netanyahu in office
Yeah, it's
for
it's
them, yani, of
impossible
course.
with Netanyahu in office. You know, they can spend gazillions of dollars and that won't happen. But the thing is, once you've seen what Israel is, it's really impossible to unsee it. So I don't think even with another government that'll be possible. But another government that is, you know, trying its best just to stay afloat is going to take American orders much more happily than Netanyahu's government. Netanyahu is known for undermining his closest allies, whether it's inside Israel or outside. Okay. He has played Trump number of times. The ceasefires in Lebanon, you know, and Gaza, which Trump insisted on before he even came into office. Um, Netanyahu immediately undermined them. He's undermined the second ceasefire. He's backtracking on things that were tentatively agreed on. He doesn't want aid going in there. Trump wants to at least show that he's gotten aid in there. And now the Americans are looking at taking over the aid distribution mechanism, right, from the Israelis, which the Israelis don't want. They want Palestinians to starve. They want them to remain in the most grotesque conditions. So they'll want to leave, as you guys discussed on Monday. Was it Monday? Yeah. The that Israeli Estonian
Yeah,
network to basically take Palestinians out of Gaza and shove them wherever people would take them, as long as they signed on the dotted line that they wouldn't return, you know, and they gave up their paperwork. So Netanyahu's always going to be pulling these numbers on Trump, and I think Trump just has he has the ear of uh, you know, empathetic ears of major players who have money in this world, and I think this is going to be interesting to watch. I do think, you know, I was hoping that we'd hear something about the Saudis, or Mohammed bin Salman making demands on the situation in Gaza and the lack of progress in the ceasefire, or on Lebanon, because Israel has been threatening to unleash a full-on war against Lebanon again and go outside the air of the areas that they normally strike. because there's been no movement in disarming the resistance in Lebanon, which is what they want. They're never going to get that. They could get Samir Jaja, right wing fundamentalist fascist, leader who's always collaborated with the Israelis, into the president's office, and they still wouldn't be able to get the disarmament of the resistance. So Israel's, uh, pushing the threats harder and harder every day, and then I mean, and then of course they've invaded and occupied swathes of southern Syria, and this would be disturbing to the Saudis as well, because the Israelis are in Lebanon, their stomping ground historically. They're in Syria, which was their stomping ground before the Arab
Yeah,
Spring.
even
Well,
Netanyahu went to Syria 2 days ago.
yeah, that was just a slap in the face to all Syrians, to all Arabs, to all Muslims. It was an embarrassment for those in the Gulf as well. So I kind of was hoping we'll get, maybe in the forthcoming days, we will get some leaks and some more information about other points discussed about West Asia. But I do think the Saudis are sitting in a very pretty position. I mean, they got this deal, as you mentioned, this non-NATO ally deal, but it's really important to mention that this is not a defense pact, okay, at all. Really, the language of all these things doesn't suggest anything more
Mm.
than lipstick, okay? All of this is lipstick. All the high points that the White House is trying to spin is just, trying to trying to spin the wins that Trump has, because in fact the only defense pact the Americans have in this region was struck with the Qataris after the Israelis, possibly in the biggest mistake they've made in recent years. And I'm not talking about mistakes that everyone could see, but mistakes that really shake up the halls of power, was to hit Qatar with no gain,
Yeah,
right?
it was
The
a failed
Qataris
assassination.
would not let this go. They took this to the bank, and the bank was a defense pact with the United States of America to protect Qatar's security and territorial integrity in case of an external attack. The Israelis were told, "You're never doing this again." I mean, Sheikh Tamim in Qatar didn't just get a "hello, I'm really sorry" on the phone by Netanyahu, which must have been like pulling teeth, I mean, the guy wouldn't easily do that. We laughed at it, like, what's a sorry? You know, after you violate international law on a country and launch an aggression, but that would have been hard enough, and then the Americans offered up the, so, really Trump is very, very, I think he's really cozying up to the Persian Gulf because they're the only ones who seem to like him, seem not to push back on him, seem not to embarrass him in public. Their headlines, because they're state controlled, never say anything bad about
Yeah.
Trump. Trump's like, oh, sanctuary, and his son-in-law is getting billions from these countries too. So his daughter's set up,
Not only in the Gulf countries. For instance, yesterday, LBCI, which is a local Lebanese news station, they had like short segment about Mohammed bin Salman visit, and they were comparing it to Netanyahu and praising Mohammed bin Salman. Mohammed bin Salman had this all this like the dinner and the F-35s, and they are saying, see, no, Saudi Arabia got this, but Netanyahu didn't get this, as if it's very important for this region. That Trump will be like, when he hosts you, will give you like, how can I say it? Attention. Yeah, they are very happy because Trump gave attention Mohammed bin Salman more than he gave attention to Netanyahu.
for sure. And I think I was reading something today uh, that has to do with protocol, things that regular people wouldn't know or
Yeah,
notice, but the kind of protocol rolled out for Mohammed bin Salman was greater than what has ever been done for Netanyahu by
yeah,
Trump. So these are all signals, and threats and leverage. The reason we call it the great game is because to these players, the masters of the universe, the ones with influence, it is a game. It is a game, and the end goal being power and money. At least the unipolar world. That is how that alliance is defined by us. There are a few comments that also note what we've been saying and said. Obviously the Saudis have the favor of Trump, says Solstar. Solstar 2401. They could have made much bolder demands. Others in the comments are pointing this out. Why didn't they? You know, MBS got all of the stuff, F-35s, blah, blah, blah. They're just useless. MBS has leverage, says Kate 224. Why didn't he use it? This is the thing. I am sure there are other things discussed there that not, are meant for only those two leaders and their teams. Okay, I'm sure there's things in the works. I'm sure that Gaza was discussed outside of this two-state solution issue, because don't forget the Americans want Arab armies to contribute to a peacekeeping force in there. And just yesterday, I think the head, one of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad officials, PIJ officials, said not one Arab country should send their troops over here. Don't make us go head to head, and fight Arabs. We don't want to do that. Um, but that would be, this is the devil's in the details, and the ceasefire really didn't detail any of this, which is what Hamas wanted. Give us the kinds of details you gave us in the first ceasefire agreement. Israel refused to. Trump couldn't wring it out of the Israelis fast enough. He wanted to announce a deal. He did without the details. Some believe this should be a peacekeeping force, not a security force with weapons, right, in which to police Palestinians, right? And so now they don't have the command of Arab armies. They're looking to get Palestinians in the diaspora and from elsewhere to get trained outside of Gaza. And then, you can imagine by who. Same people who trained the PA to kill Palestinians in the West Bank, to bring them in. But again, as a policing force, because they want someone else other than Hamas to have weapons and to be dealing with the Palestinian community in Gaza. Anyways, none of this is working out. So for sure, the American.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
but by the way, the Israelis or Netanyahu also, they created this problem because they refused Fatah to be part of Gaza.
Correct.
So and now they are refusing any country to come inside Gaza.
Yeah,
So they
and
created this
I
problem.
can see the meeting. Why Mohammed? You know, sorry, that sounded more like George W. Why Mohammed? Didn't you? Why don't you bring
Why,
some
Mohammed? Yeah.
Saudi forces? They've been so well trained in Yemen. We'll get if you do it. The Emiratis will do it. The Qataris. Well, I'm sure the Israelis don't want the Qataris there. Like the Turks have offered, but the Israelis have said no to that as well. Why don't you have some forces? And then bin Salman would have said, we would do it with this condition so we can secure the safety of our military troops, okay, or our peacekeeping troops. And that is never a guarantee that Trump knows he can wrest from Netanyahu. So I'm sure there were other things on the table. I believe, you know, probably Trump isn't so interested in the details. These are things that a lot of the underlings, anyways, take care of, right? The requests are made and don't necessarily get to Trump in that actual sitting with Mohammed bin Salman, but his team are working out solutions that give the Saudis what they want. And the Saudi teams are working to give, to reach something where they can give Americans what they want. So I do think this is multifaceted, but the main thing here is that Saudi Arabia is welcome in Washington again with fanfare, with a sitting American president who just gets some love from important, powerful global leader, right? Um, and the Americans have been generous back with the Persian Gulf. Okay, they've gotten money. Trump wants money, but they've given them a defense pact. They've given them the goods they want, the stuff they never had that they want now, right? And those have probably elicited a fight domestically and with some of their allies overseas. So we're seeing something new evolve here. I wonder if the Israelis will attack Lebanon with a possible Saudi veto in the wings. It depends how much Netanyahu is willing to rile Trump that day. You know, politics is all about, like any good relationship, picking your battles. The worst thing for Netanyahu is for him to have to be on the phone with Trump every day saying, I need this, I need that. That's, Trump's not going to be his bag boy,
Yeah.
right? He's going to have to pick his battles. And I think so. Something game changing happened for the Israelis, and that is, well, the Cradle scoop basically that came out yesterday, or exclusive, was that there is an agreement between Moscow and Damascus directly that bypassed Turkey altogether. The Russians intend to reestablish 9 military positions in Quneitra. Now, Quneitra is this a southern governorate in Syria. It is heavily populated by Druze, as is Sueda, which is separated with Quneitra by a governorate or two. I think maybe just Dara.
Yes.
And they essentially, Quneitra is on the border of the occupied Golan Heights. Okay. So Israel's whole thrust, to explain and spin its invasion and occupation of southern Syria, right, since Ahmad al Shara arrived in Damascus, is that we want to stop terror groups from attacking us. Okay. Number one. And B, we're there to protect minorities, meaning the Druze. The Druze, I've been to both Sueda and Quneitra, and I will tell you something. The Druze in Quneitra during the Syrian war hated Israel, and they hated Nusra. And Ahmad al Shara, the acting president of Syria, is the head of Nusra, okay, or was the head of Nusra. These two were hated because the Druze repeatedly told me that every time Nusra attacked our area in trying to take territory in Quneitra during the war, the Israelis came in either with helicopters, tanks, or other things to offer support to Nusra, to Al Qaeda, to offer support to Al Qaeda. So the Quneitra Druze absolutely hate these two actors. Um, Anyways, the Russians are going to come take positions in there. The Israelis are spinning it. You know, Netanyahu's talked to Putin, and this is something Israel wants. They're saying Israel's okay with because they want to make sure no one's going to be attacking them from Syria, which is a joke. This, when these guys were Al Qaeda, they didn't attack Israel once. When they were ISIS, they didn't attack Israel once. When they came into power in Damascus, Israel is the only one that was attacking. Okay, they've not hit back once. All right.
And also Israel took the wounded from their side. And
Yeah.
also there's photos and footage. If I find it very fast, I will put it of Netanyahu checking upon
The Al
Nusra
Qaeda
fighters.
wounded.
Yeah,
Yeah. In Israeli hospitals getting fixed and sent back into the war zone.
yeah.
So, I mean, so despite what the Israelis say, it's absolute spin. They do not have a veto on this. And this is what's important. Now, Shara, who has repeatedly been trying to get the attention of Trump, okay? In every capital Trump visited, Shara tries to show up, right? Because ultimately it is the Americans that can remove the punishing Caesar Act sanctions that they imposed on Syria to, cripple the Syrian economy during the reign of Bashar al-Assad. So it was something. By the way, did my voice change?
No,
Okay.
for me, no.
Okay. So this was something that would have had to have tacit approval from the Americans, which is because Shadow's not going to cross the Americans. The Americans are in some kind of indirect war with Russia in Ukraine, correct? One that this sitting US president doesn't want. But Shadow's not going to cross the Americans and bring Russian military troops in and set up positions for them in the south of Syria, except to stop the Israeli onslaught, which has become embarrassing, right? But there is an additional embarrassment for Shara. Don't forget, he and his terrorist militants were fighting not just the Syrian army, but the Iranians, Hezbollah, and the Russians. right? Until the Russians and Turks established the demilitarization zones and program. Okay. Um, so there were always open channels or those last few years between the militants and the Russians. But the Russians essentially stayed quiet after Shara took Damascus. They didn't want to lose their base in Tartus, but them coming in to the south of Syria is to protect Syria against a further Israeli onslaught, which would have to have been okayed in Washington,
Mm.
in my view.
Yeah, in my view, what's happened, I don't know in the short term, but I think the long term is very good for the Syrians, or for Syria as Syria, regardless of the leaders of Syria, because this will prevent Israel to say that we want to enter Syria to protect the Druze, or to protect our land, because now there's Russia, and Russia will guarantee this. Which will not allow Israel to use this excuse.
To
That's
infiltrate the
yeah,
Druze any
that's
further,
my opinion.
or the Alawites, right?
Yeah,
Russia protected Alawites too, as
yeah,
did
one
the
hundred percent.
Iranians, as did the Syrian army. But now the Alawites are getting slaughtered under the terrorist regime
Yeah,
of
and يعني many Alawites either came to the Lebanese border, or to Hamimim air base when the massacres happened in the Sahel.
correct, correct. So we have seen the current Syrian, whatever that is that an army? Is it? Yeah. Um, attack Druze
By the
in
way, they
Druze
don't say
areas,
army.
attacked Alawites in Alawite areas, fight the Kurds, which is an American Israeli force in there. There's definitely a tug of war in terms of who gets to rule Syria in the aftermath of Assad's fall, and it is between Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Israel, as the main players. Um, and I think this will continue for the foreseeable future. If one doesn't get the upper hand, or is content with what they have, they would all probably be satisfied with carving up Syria and making it a federalized state, But it, anyways, the alliances keep shifting, and it will be interesting because this is a new scenario for Syria, and I do believe we will see shifting alliances. The fact that the Russians are going to set up military positions in Quneitra is an astounding new development. And for those who say, "Oh, it's because they were always in bed with Shara and his ilk," no, it's not how it works. Um, Politics is a cold business. It's interest based. We've always said that here. And I've always sought to explain a Russian, an Iranian, a Chinese, an American, a Saudi, an Emirati position based not on our emotion about what horrible thing is happening the day, but why these countries are taking the decisions they're making. It's always interest based. Nobody attacks, no country, no state, nation state is not an individual. It doesn't have emotions. It is a, secular, unfeeling entity. It acts according to interests. So in this case, it's embarrassing for Shara that he's asking, nay, begging for Russian help, that he hightailed it to Moscow to meet with Putin and ask for help. And the fact that this is being done means some calculations are being changed, even in Washington. And Moscow's not going to
Yes.
lose this opportunity because don't forget the other side. They're all fighting each other for a piece of the pie. Russia can stay out of the fray. It really can. In a sense, it's only there to stop Israel from the south. Um, I think the Turks like this because they don't want Israel to gain hegemony over Syria because even though Israel physically is in the south, don't forget it has its proxies in the north, which is where Turkey views its area of influence, and those proxies are Kurds, right? So the Turks want any opportunity to nip things in the bud, with the Israelis, and the Russians being there would be an asset. Um, but let's see. Shara, also like the Lebanese, probably finding out that American help never really manifests,
Mm.
right? And you have to um, explore your options and
Yeah,
expand your horizons.
if you look at it, yani it's very funny, or not funny. It's the irony is that when Bashar al-Assad asked Russia for help, everybody said he's traitor and blah blah blah. And he asked Russia for help against Nusra and the leader of Nusra, which is now the president. And now this president came, or he's the interim president of Syria, and he did the same. He asked Russia for help. It's the irony is insane. Yani if you
But
think about it, yani for them, Russia before Ukraine, they said that Al Nusra and Al Qaeda in Syria were their number one enemy, and Nusra in Syria said that Russia is their number one enemy sometimes, and then sometimes they say Iran, sometimes they said Russia, but now they are together. It's insane. The politics is insane.
no, it is. It is. That's what I'm saying. This is one of those times where you're going to see a shakeup in interests, a shakeup in
Mm.
alliances and partnerships and backroom deals, etc. Um, and we can only guess at what these things are based on our analysis of what the interests are, the core interests of these states. So, for instance, those who were criticizing the fact that the Russians and Chinese didn't veto the American proposal on Gaza, right, at the UN Security Council, um, and basically, said called them sellouts and whatever, fail to look at this impartially and unemotionally. Like I said, if you want to get to what deals could be had and where things are heading, you have to analyze it very coldly. What are the interests? So let's say Ahmed al-Sharaa went to Moscow weeks ago, more than that.
No, less than يعني
Yeah, well,
less.
and in the meantime, this resolution's been going around in the UN Security Council, and the Russians actually put forth their own resolution to show, for the record, what parts of the American resolution had major holes in it. For now, we
One
all,
month, Sharmin.
huh?
Time is running. 1 month.
1 month, yeah.
Oh my god.
So, what? All the Russians know the Americans are backing a resolution and put forth a resolution. Never ever will the Russian resolution get tabled instead of the American one. That just doesn't happen. So they needed that to put on the record what the holes were with the American one, and there are plenty of holes. The Americans, it's you can negotiate and water down things so much that you essentially don't get anything done, and that's what the American resolution does. Okay, it
So
tries to not upset so many parties, essentially Israel, that it's proposed the most watered down version of things that the Israelis will completely bulldoze over. So the Russians have gone on record. The record stands that neither China or Russia think that this resolution was worth it. But also importantly, you have to realize that Trump's Gaza proposal was the only proposal on the global table for Gaza. So neither the Russians nor the Chinese want to be the ones to scuttle the only peacekeeping measures that are on the table internationally, right?
but also the United States, there were like plans, but the United States they vetoed everything also. And I want just to tell you, Sharmin, we have Shannon Al, our viewer. He sent you a super chat saying,
Hi,
"Welcome
Shannon.
back, Sharmin." He sent it twice.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Our first super chat of the
Yeah,
day. Come on, guys. Oh, Esteban would absolutely
yeah.
be scowling right now. Hit that like button. Engage more. What does he say? I don't know. Hit that like button is the one
Hit
that
that,
sticks.
yeah, smash it.
Smash that like button. Smash it, smash it, smash it now. Okay. And yeah, uh, what were we talking about? Oh yeah. So basically, um, all I'm saying is that there's explanations for everything. And then imagine that the Russians don't want to push the point here because they know before we do the deal that's going through in Syria. Okay, to stop further Israeli encroachment into Syria at the request of the Syrian government, which is exactly what Bashar al Assad did at the request of the internationally recognized Syrian government. He asked for the intervention and assistance of a foreign military, right? This is what Shara is doing. You massive Shara supporters, you Al Qaeda supporters out there, you're the ones who should be, you know, online explaining this. Okay, explaining the fact that Al Qaeda is not fighting back against Israel, that it doesn't give a damn about Palestinians, that it's expelled every Palestinian political group from its territory and disarmed them, that it sides with the Gulf, the Persian Gulf dictatorships and America on all things, and is just it put and that they put on a suit and tie and they're bending the knee big time. So y'all do the explaining. Anyways, Russia's back in the play in Syria. We will see who tries to scuttle it. The interesting thing for me and the obvious thing for me, which is why I've always said, why don't the Russians, Chinese, and others, okay, um, send in aid ships right into Gaza? Massive, massive tankers, okay? Because the Israelis, those are two countries the Israelis would never fire upon. Okay. They'll fire upon the Americans, like the USS Liberty, but they will not fire upon the Chinese and the Russians. Also, note that the Chinese are signing infrastructure deals with the Israelis. Y'all can smash China on that, do that. I understand it because what you do, this is soft power. Y'all are so used to watching hard power, okay, and confrontations. This is what soft power can ultimately get you. It can get you at the seat at the table. It can get you leverage. It can get you near pressure points, right? So criticize it all you want. I mean, for those of you who criticize Russia and China, but like love Iran, for instance, I would point out that there was huge criticism for 2 years that Iran was doing nothing. It was all talk. It let down its allies in Lebanon. It let down its allies in Yemen. It let down its allies in Syria. And then, of course, the
and
12-day war
Qatar
happened.
يعني.
And yeah, they attacked Qatar. You can say all those things, but did Iran act outside of its own interest? It has to consider its own population, right? And then did it in fact act in a way no other power on this planet acted in the face of a genocide when it was appropriate, when it was legal? To attack a state is illegal. That is a law based order. The rules based order says we can attack any state and there are no repercussions. But for a global South country that is on, the unipolar world's hit list like Iran, they basically um, would be, you know, NATO would come down on them if Iran attacked a country that was merely threatening them through words, So all these actors act according to their own weight and capabilities and interests, and they do so incrementally. You don't see any fast moves from these players. You just don't. The Americans and Israelis are constantly, right? Kinetic, big moves every day, big headlines. Oftentimes, nothing that comes out of it. But the other side doesn't show their hand. They practice strategic ambiguity. They lead with soft power. And this is, in fact, what's happening. So, my point was the Russians in southern Syria, uh, the Israelis are not likely to make very many pushes. What's interesting is that news came out yesterday. And was it yesterday or today that the Israeli Air Force did major overflights in Syria? They didn't drop bombs on Syria. They just did
Mm.
scare overflights on Syria. Something has slightly shifted.
Yeah, I just want to say I liked a comment here which says Al Sharia is just an instrument, but which hand will use it better? It's from
Who-
our reviewer, Soul Star. So, Sharmin, also, we can talk about in the last segment about the Israeli bombings in Gaza and in Lebanon in the recent 24 hours. In recent 24 hours, Israel killed around 34 Palestinians in Gaza, and they put a statement saying that we coordinate with the Americans before bombing this facility, or they said facility. It's like just some tents and some people that were gathering. So the medical sources in Gaza said that 34 people were killed. Among the dead were 11 children. One of them was a newborn, and 77 others were killed. And that came in a new wave of attacks on the eve of World Children's Day. And in Lebanon, also, uh, in the past 2 days, they killed around 14 people
Yeah.
in Al Halwi refugee camp. It's a Palestinian refugee camp in Sidon, south of Lebanon. They targeted a mini football playground.
The first one I ever visited.
You went there before?
Yeah. What? You haven't?
No, I haven't.
I guess it's where you, when you grow, you're
Yeah,
born, you grow up, you live somewhere, you don't go visit the places that other people want. It's the first, I think, first Palestinian camp I ever visited when I first came here in 2009. These are refugee camps. Ain al Helwe, like Nahr al Bared, are two camps where there are factions that are armed, um, or have been, right, in the past.
yeah.
And of course, the Lebanese government has promised to disarm these guys. Where is that, by the way? I haven't followed that story at all.
Forgot خلاص.
Yeah, you can't disarm anyone in Lebanon because Lebanon isn't sovereign. It's just that simple. They can pretend they are, but they're not. So, at any rate, Ain al Helwe is a refugee camp. Okay, people for generations have lived. And worse yet, they're probably two or three times over refugees because first expelled by Zionist settler terrorists, right? Crossing over the Lebanese border, then the attack on the south of Lebanon and the invasion and occupation by the Zionist terrorists pushed them further north. It's an awful situation, but if you notice, Israel is hitting harder at low hanging fruit in Lebanon. They figure nobody will criticize them hitting Palestinians, right? Because the Lebanese have shown, you know, at the national level, not individual Lebanese or different parties, but the national level, um, real antipathy for Palestinians in this country. Really, really a shame. And then, of course, they can hit Lebanese in the south because they can call them Shia, Hezbollah, Iran supporters, right? The thing is, notice that Israel's war rhetoric on Lebanon has increased substantially, but it's hitting what they know to be or believe to be low hanging fruit. So a lot of threats right now. The issue is whether it will turn into outside of these areas, where they will go for fuller fruit, more dangerous fruit. Will they ever target anyone in Beirut again, for instance, as they did during the hot war that they had last year? The Israelis have come to the conclusion, which I think at the cradle we were telling y'all from a year ago when the ceasefire was struck. They're never going to be able to disarm the resistance. It's just not possible. Lebanon lacks sovereignty. It has a national army that is made up of all Lebanese. Okay, even if you put pro US, retards at the head of the army, um, they're not going to be able to make the rank and file do things that in their own towns and villages, right? So the Lebanese army is also tiring of this kind of rubbish rhetoric from the Americans. And we know this because this week the Americans had an aneurysm. Okay.
But
Because
also, Sharmin, I want to comment over what you're saying. It's not only now about Israel and Hezbollah. The people or the government or part of the government of Lebanon and some parts of Lebanon, mainly the Lebanese Forces Party and Kataib Party, the people of these parties, when they go to TV or when they do these conferences and they post on social media, they are literally saying why Israel stopped. They are saying
yeah,
that, uh, for instance, the Baba is coming to Lebanon. They are going to TVs stations in Lebanon saying, why Israel didn't finish that job because where the airport is somehow a stronghold for Hezbollah. So they are saying, let's Israel wipe everything there so the Pope can come on to a clean land. So now it's more about they are playing the sectarian paper, and many Shias in Lebanon are now not only afraid from Israel, they are afraid from the government, they are afraid from the army, and they are afraid from other parties that might ignite a civil war, because the same parties that ignited the civil war in 1975 are still present. يعني for instance, Jaja, who fought in the civil war, is still present. Al-Kataib party, Jamail, who's like controlled by the Jamail family, the sons are still present.
Mm.
So people are not only now afraid from Israel, unfortunately, they are afraid from parts of the government, and they are afraid from the parties that might ignite a civil war to please the Israelis, and to please or to accomplish their stupid Lebanese agenda by and asking help from the Israelis. So there's many people in Lebanon now are thinking and are afraid of this. So the weapons are not only now to protect Lebanon from Israel, is like also to protect certain sects in Lebanon from other parties, and maybe including Druze. Not only Shias are in danger, because what happened in Syria
Mm.
also.
But the greatest irony of this is we learned that I think sometime in September or earlier, the pro-U.S. Lebanese president Joseph Aoun had conferred with Israel with Hezbollah to ask them if they would help protect the border from potential attack by Syrian militants. So they need these weapons. The point is they can't. Okay, so the Americans realize very clearly at this point that the disarmament of the Lebanese resistance is not possible. There's no one in the country brave enough to do it, okay, or stupid enough to do it. And so the rhetoric has changed. And one of the things that kicked off nasty rhetoric towards the Lebanese army, which is heavily funded by the US, was that the new Lebanese army commander, Rodolphe Haikal, um, said uh, he called in a statement, was it a statement or a letter? Yeah, it was a Lebanese army statement released on Sunday that made the US officials see red. He used the language, the Israeli enemy. Okay. This is the language that many people would use
Yeah, everybody uses it.
when
Yeah.
deterrence
even
existed
even in the
before the
books,
war.
when we study, while we are young or anything,
Yeah.
when Israel is mentioned, we say the enemy.
Yeah.
It's
And Israel is the, I think maybe the only acknowledged enemy for years now of the Lebanese state. But that kind of language kind of disappeared once Gaza started, right? Except by pro-resistance or
Yeah,
resistance officials. And the head of the Lebanese army used the words the Israeli enemy. And specifically, in his statement, he blames, quote, the Israeli enemy for the violation of Lebanese sovereignty and for obstructing the army's full deployment in the south. So he says what people haven't been saying because they don't want to upset the Americans, which is basically people in the south are now asking the Lebanese army, please come in. It's not like the Southerners are afraid of the Lebanese army. By and large, their experience with the Lebanese army in the south has been positive by and large.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, because the
Yesterday
army
they
people
came. Yeah,
in the South, and they're not like Shia army people, have been helpful and are trying to make it safe for them. Okay. So people in the South have this week even been calling for the Lebanese army, please come into our town or our village so that the Israelis won't bomb it. Right. Because the Israelis, basically say they asked the the Israelis demanded that the Lebanon via the Americans that the Lebanese army go and search houses. And Haika, the Lebanese army commander, said, "No, we're not going to do that. And one of the reasons we're not going to do that is because once we do it, you're going to ask it all the time. You're going to just say you have to search this house and that house because that's how Israel plays it, right? Once they normalize something, it's done. He's not going to normalize it for the enemy state, and he called it the enemy state. So the Americans went ballistic on this. and of course now they hate him probably, you know,
Yeah,
and
he was supposed to go to the United States. They canceled the visit.
yeah, yeah, they canceled his visit with U.S. officials here as well.
يعني the irony and the double standards يعني for instance Israel killing 40 Palestinians in one day for no reason and bombing a refugee camp in Lebanon for no reason. They said they killed officials, but Hamas denied it, and the guy who was his name circulating in the Israeli media is not dead. So they killed people who were playing football in a refugee camp.
Yeah,
Nobody said anything, and the Lebanese head of the Lebanese army said the Israeli enemy, and they want to stop everything.
yeah.
As if I don't care, and I
But
hope they stop it.
also,
Yani.
he also refused to search houses,
Yeah,
and he's also, you know,
but this came before searching the house. Yani, they
yeah,
went ballistic only for this word. The next day, Israel asked them to search the
yeah.
houses,
So you know,
or the
he's
sorry, the mechanism.
he's saying what his president and prime minister wouldn't dare to say to the Americans, basically, and respect to him for doing that. You know,
Yeah, of
not because
course.
he's on our side of the argument, because I don't know that he is. You know, it's just that he took a position which is realistic. You know, this is considered, Israel is considered, you know, besides Samir Jajan, a few absolute fascistic fringe loonies, right? Israel's considered an enemy by everyone in Lebanon. You know,
Yeah. But
um,
sorry, Sharmeen, we have a super chat from Muhtada Nasri. I think we answered this question more than once, but the question is disarmament possible?
Yeah, thanks. No, it isn't possible. There's no one who can disarm the resistance. All right. And so Israel will just keep making up more lies. They want it disarmed. They want Lebanon to disarm the resistance in this country, which they couldn't do themselves in the war, right? They could not enter Lebanese, they could not enter and hold Lebanese territory during the entirety of that 1 year that they were fighting, right? They couldn't hold it. It's only after a ceasefire that they basically went in. Israel was unable to establish and you know any of its war goals in Lebanon, and so it's trying to now. And then it's using the threat of attacking Lebanon, even further, you know, north of the Litani and Beirut. Even they've mentioned if the resistance
Yeah,
isn't disarmed,
yeah,
and they will use the same rhetoric about Gaza. Okay, so if let's say aid starts going in there, um, Israel will drop even more bombs, and they will say, no, 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 Hamas is running amok. You know, they're bullying civilians, they're stealing aid, all of the stuff that even Western media has now acknowledged never happened. Hamas was never stealing aid from civilians. It was always trying to stop the Israeli backed, ISIS linked militias from stealing the aid from Palestinians in Gaza. So the Israeli rhetoric will continue. It will always try to keep the screws on in Lebanon, in Syria, even, and in Gaza. But they weren't able to do this post a ceasefire in Iran. And the reason I believe that that is the case is because Iran answered in kind, absolutely to the last minute, okay, and escalated. And Israel was really afraid of Iranian firepower. And the second reason is because Iran didn't allow the Americans to negotiate a ceasefire. They just seized fire, both sides at the same time, because in the negotiation, Israel goes for loopholes, and they will hold their opposing party um, responsible for every single letter and word in that agreement, but never expect to be held accountable for their own actions. And this
yeah.
is why, you know, I said that Iran wins in this scenario if one of the two reasons is it establishes or reaches its military and political goals, and we don't know what those are because they never stated them. But it really, we know it's achieved its goals if Israel is unable to attack Iran even once again, because we've seen what they do with ceasefires everywhere else, but they won't dare do it with Iran. So I, you know, I just think that all we're just again, like we're talking about the Russians in Syria and MBS in the US, we're just in a scenario where a lot of things are changing and makes things really unpredictable. Really unpredictable. I could make an argument for why Israel won't attack Lebanon again. And I could also make an argument why Israel will attack Lebanon again.
Yeah, 100%.
It depends what criteria becomes most important, in the days and weeks prior to a decision being made or not made. So we're at that place now, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. Also, يعني I think the Israelis and the Americans, they know that the army can't disarm Hezbollah, but what they want, I think, Barak, the U.S. envoy to the region, he said it. I think maybe he slipped it when he said that they want the army to fight Hezbollah and they want a civil war in
It's
Lebanon.
never going to happen.
That's what they want because they know that they can't disarm Hezbollah and the Israeli army with all its might and the West behind it and the United States. What they were able to do in Lebanon
Mm,
for 2 months is to like just enter in some places, not the whole border, like
mm.
2.5 kilometers,
And
which is
leave within 24
which is nothing.
hours.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and also this happened after the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, which
correct.
is the most important Arab person, at least according to me, to ever live in the past 50 years. Just not to
And
exaggerate.
with the disruption of all the
Yes,
communications.
and communication and the pager attacks. This happened like a few days after the pager attack, and they couldn't establish it. I think
Yeah.
currently
Which
Hezbollah and
targeted
better,
Radwan forces
yeah,
too, Hezbollah
100%.
special
I,
forces.
I I think I don't have information, but I think because to be honest, I am from the south and
Mm.
and I know the people of the south, and I am one of them. I think now Hezbollah is in a better shape than last year. That's 100% because after the shock of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah's assassination and the pager attacks and all what happened, I think they are better now in a better shape, and I think if Israel find any person to attack or like weapon depot to attack, they will attack. They will not ask anybody. And what it's happening currently in Lebanon, they are just uh, attacking some motorcycles and some cars passing by in the south. Sometimes I'm telling you, sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's a doctor, and sometimes it's a member of Hezbollah. But it's not always. It's not always like that. And sometimes, like 2 days ago, they issued like a warning for a whole village. And imagine a whole village is a facility for Hezbollah, and now they acknowledged it. And that's the incident that Shamim was talking about, and then the Lebanese army came. So I think that's an argument why Israel will not attack Hezbollah. For me, and also there's many arguments that they will attack
Yeah, exactly.
Hezbollah. So unfortunately, we have to wait and see. And unfortunately, I think the currently the whole region and beyond is standing and waiting for maybe a decision that's being made by Netanyahu. We don't know what will happen with Netanyahu. Maybe if the court asks him to come and he wants to like he might make an attack not only in Lebanon, maybe he may make a border attack, or if he gets the pardon that Trump asked for, maybe he will stop the wars. We don't know. There's many things that will happen. Maybe they will go into Syria after Russia. They want to show Russia who's boss in this region. Maybe we don't know.
No, listen, I think um, there's a lot of nuance that's developed. Again, when I'm saying one of the things is Trump has gotten an education in the last what? Wait, we always do this. How long has he been in?
Nine
9 months,
months,
10 months?
nine.
No, it's November, December, January. It's 10 months. It's almost 10 months.
I saw it before I came. It was 9 months. If I'm mistaken, they can correct me, but I think so. Yeah, nine
Okay,
months.
so anyways, in 10 months, he's learned a lot. Okay, he was going to come in, he was going to end the Ukraine war. He was, he had a ceasefire by his demands before he even came in, right? And everything unraveled. And he has learned where the difficulties are. Okay, it's, um, he got he sounded great with Putin after they met in Alaska, and then he flipped on Putin, and then he went the other way, and in the end, we can see Trump threatens a lot. But if you know where his interests lie, you know what he's going to do. In the end, he's going to capitulate. He never has wanted to go head to head with the Russians. Just doesn't interest him. He'd much rather do business with them. Okay. And same with the Chinese, by the way. He doesn't have that deep state mentality about China and hegemony and, economy, etc. He wants to still be the best, but he wants to make money. So Trump has, let's note, oh, by the way, smash that like button. Okay. Smash it, man. And then um, he is we learned this week that there is a secretly negotiated 28-point plan being worked out between Washington and Moscow, completely bypassing Kiev. All right. And which basically, with a few caveats, they're giving Putin what he wants. But Putin doesn't even have to put up with those caveats. He doesn't. He is on a winning streak. Okay. And everybody now hates Zelensky because the Western media finally, talked about the corruption, right?
You know what's happening with Zelensky is also what's happening with Netanyahu
Netanyahu.
regarding the West. For instance, because
Except
people,
Netanyahu's polling numbers domestically are probably
yeah,
higher
no,
than
no, I'm talking
Zelensky's.
about complete different
Yeah.
different thing. I think the Western civilization, as they name it, it's not as luxurious as before, and they
Yeah.
want to blame something. So the Europeans are blaming Zelensky that he's taking their money, and the Americans are blaming Netanyahu that
Yeah.
he's taking their money. And I just want to tell you, Sharmin, I just looked it up. Yeah, he's in office 10 months sharp. He came in 20 January, and now it's 20 November. It's okay. Once a month,
Am I right again?
you will be
Am
right.
I?
Once a month, it's okay.
Anyways, listen, guys, we've kind of gone over time. I just,
Oh my God,
I
yeah,
know, right?
yeah.
Uh, wait, what did I want to say? I think
You
I
wanted
wanted.
to say about the questions for Thursday, maybe?
No, no, no. Well, I'm just saying with the so Trump is realizing there's nuance in everything, and he's now also realizing who's being reasonable and who's not. Okay, negotiation, you give and take. On one side of things, like his European partners and Ukraine, they don't want to give anything, even while they're losing. In Netanyahu in Israel wants everything, wants to give nothing. The Gulf people are going, there, Donald. Oh, it must be so hard being in your position. Here's some money, right? So a lot of things are shifting. Nuances are being recognized. If Trump wants to end his presidency without World War III, he's going to have to shake down some of his allies. But yeah, we'll get to more discussions in the future. Every single podcast of ours is going to now, shift tone based on what new developments are going on. Really, there's so much, you know, um, there's so much. I mean, really, what we
I
said
know,
here
yeah,
is
yeah.
that we can analyze that there will be war, and we can analyze there won't be a war.
And
There's
also,
enough
يعني,
data points for both arguments, and there's too many data points right now. Our goal is to see 1,000 data points and figure out, I've always said, which three are the salient ones, the most important ones that will make you pull together where things are heading. On that note, let me just say that we are going to establish this thing for our Patreons only. I think we mentioned it before. On Mondays, we'll remind you, during the show, send us your questions. This is Patreons only. Send us your questions. And on Thursday, we will have a special segment for you answering your questions. We will try to answer everyone's question or as many as we can possibly do. And, smash that like button, buy a mug, and do
thank
please continue to follow, share our podcast.
and comment also. We read your comments,
We read all
Akid.
your comments.
But
Um,
don't mention the sound. We know this, خلاص.
I think this sounds better. I
Yeah, I
didn't
know
see
that,
anyone complain about it
which
today.
is good.
Yeah.
Or at least give us credit when the sound is good.
Yep. Follow us on all our social media accounts, and we will see you on Monday.
Bye bye.